Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks. Ladies and gentlemen, part 3 of this series rounds out with a conversation with Vanessa Hurst, who has provided a lot of this information to me here that we've gone over in the last 2 parts. And again, she's a part of a school-based decision-making committee on a volunteer basis within her child's middle school. And it jumps right in, so go ahead and give this a listen.
I have 3 kids. I know in my email I said 2 of them we're pulling out and putting in private school next year. The oldest is remaining in public school and high school. We feel like he has a pretty good, solid foundation to go ahead and move up and move on, and he'll be fine through high school. It's the other 2 who are starting to, you could really see where they're lacking in their education, and nothing to do with the teachers, but the policies that have been put in place this year, or the new plan that the district is rolling out, I guess.
Right.
So also there's a few things, like I know that you had kind of touched on what SBDM does. SBDM is School-Based Decision-Making or Site-Based Decision-Making Council.
There we go, yeah. I forgot the
the acronym, yeah.
The definition there, yeah.
So yeah, that is, so we review and approve budgets for our school. Money is allocated from the district, and then we do with that, we'll, like staffing allocations and, what we'll have Title I money, and we decide what is done with that Title I money. We do school-wide schedules. We have never in the past approved individual classroom schedules, just school-wide schedules, bell schedule, things like that.
I got to stop you there too, because that seems so odd to me. Simply because that's usually something that a counselor does. The counselors are normally the ones that handle that kind of a thing. And I mean, again, it's clearly no offense to you or the committee per se, but it seems like the district's policy here is to continuously outsource the decision making to countless people, so that if something caves in, it's not their fault.
Yes, it certainly appears that way. And then we also create school policy. So, in a public school, usually, I'm libertarian, so the less laws there are, or the less government interference there is, the better. But when it comes to a school and public setting, the more policies you have, the better off you are. So, we go over school policy every year, we're supposed to, and everything from, I actually have it right here, a list of the policies that are to be adopted by local school board to be implemented by School-Based Decision-Making Council. Now, this is a Kentucky statute or law. School budget and administration, including discretionary funds, activity, and other school funds for maintenance, supplies, equipment, etc. Assessment of individual student progress, including testing and reporting of student progress to students, parents, school district, and the community and state. School improvement plans, including the form and function of strategic planning and its relationship to district planning, as well as school safety plans requested for funding from the Center for School Safety under KRS 158446. Professional development plans developed pursuant to KRS 156095. Parent, citizen, and community participation, including the relationship of the council with others. Cooperation and collaboration with the district, with other districts, and with other public and private agencies. Requirements for waiver of district policies, requirements for record keeping by school council, and process for appealing a decision made by the school council. So we're supposed to have policies on all these different things, and the site-based council actually sets up those policies. They also, let's see what else. We approve classroom assignment. So, we're a K through 8 school. I have 3 children, K through 8. So I have kids in the elementary and a child in middle school, and we'll decide, being that we're a small K through 8 school, we have a unique challenge each year to try and figure out where kids go. A lot of times we end up with a split classroom, like a 3-4 split. We've had a K1 split. Those are, pretty common in our size school. So we decide what, where those allocations go. So that's kind of what a site-based council does.
Just
Less and less so as time goes on. We have less, room for debate and less room for actually deciding on things. So,
describe again the K1 split. What does that mean?
okay, so a K1 split would be a classroom with kindergarten and first grade.
Oh,
with
wow.
one teacher. Yeah. We don't have enough money to our school to provide enough teachers or classroom space sometimes. So we'll have a teacher that'll have to teach 2 grades.
Gotcha. Okay.
So we've had kindergarten first, we've had second, third, and I think we've had third and fourth grade together at different times. It just depends on the year, what teachers we have available, what teachers are willing to do the split grades. So a lot of that is what we do. Another thing you had asked about, there is in our quote ecosystem, or quote unquote ecosystem, we have something called Mustang Matters, and you've also mentioned Care and Connect. These are the same thing. It's just named differently based on our school mascot and what our school has decided to call the Care and Connect. And the concept is that first thing in the morning, students will meet with a teacher that is not their regular teacher, and they will, talk about different things. They'll do different activities. In the beginning, it kind of started out, they would talk about friendship, or they have different. Sometimes they'll watch the school newscast together, and it's just the same group of kids. They're all different grade levels, close to their grade level, but like, for example, my middle school son has kids that are 6th, 7th, and 8th grade in his Mustang Matters group, and my first grader has kids that are in kindergarten, 1st, and 2nd grade in his Mustang Matters group. And and same with my 5th grader. There's 3rd, 4th, and 5th in his group. And they all, and each is led by a teacher or school employee. Not necessarily doesn't necessarily have to be a certified teacher. There are instructional assistants that lead Mustang Matters groups. There's even like the secretary has a Mustang Matters group. So each employee is the idea is to create a sense of community, I guess. So that's a little clarification on that. You had mentioned Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say there's that word community again.
Yes.
I just think it's interesting that they're mixing all of these students together, and it doesn't seem like it's for anything other than to try to make it look like we're all in the same boat together, and just sort of this commune mentality, as I've said.
Well, and then to kind of segue off that, there's actually in the high school, the newer high school, we have 2 high schools in our county. The newer high school is Thomas Nelson High School. And they were the first ones to start house structures within the school. So you have 4 different houses. If you could, to kind of give a good comparison, I guess Harry Potter. If you think Harry Potter, how they had the houses, they had Slytherin and Ravenclaw and Gryffindor and Hufflepuff. So it's kind of like that. You categorize students in a house structure, and they come in before they're even a freshman. The house that they're going to be in is decided on. And I don't know if it's like a random selection exactly, or if they some aspect of their academics and personality plays into it, I'm sure. But so they started the house structure at this school, and now they've been implementing it for the past 2-3 years at the elementary and middle school level, at least at our school. I'm not sure what they're doing at the other schools within the county district. So within this house structure, you have, they had to restructure it so that whole families could be in a specific house. So, for example, we are, our family's in, I forget what house we're in. I think it's It's called Sherwood House. And so your Mustang Matters leader is also in that house. So like my son recently went to their orientation for high school, and he was told, they were told what house they're going to be in for high school, which is different than the elementary level, different name. And so it'll carry on into the rest of our family. So if my younger two end up going to Thomas Nelson High School, they will also fall into that same house. And so you do everything in this house, so your grade, at the high school level, it's freshman through senior, all mixed in this house. And you have certain house leaders, which are teachers. They belong to that house, and they're the leader of that house. It's very much like the best comparison I could think of is Harry Potter is what it reminds me of.
It seems like a lot of tribal nonsense.
Yes.
I mean, when I taught middle school, unfortunately, it's in Florida, and they categorize everybody in a very similar way, and they use fish names. So every single, there would be 3 or 4 fish name groups within one grade level.
Yeah.
And then the different students would make fun of each other for being in a particular group. And then they would almost treat the group like a gang. And then they would basically pin each other against one another because of those different names. Has that been something that's happened thus far?
I don't know about that, because there's really, I guess, tight control over the image of the houses and how that plays out. Now, I know they do have pride games. They call it pride games, and there's pride rallies. And at the pride rallies, you stick with your house, and, I'm sure there's bantering back and forth. I haven't been at the high school level yet. And from what I hear, it doesn't turn into a gang mentality, but it is supposed to create more of a family atmosphere and make kids more comfortable, I guess, and also maybe build relationships with other students that they normally wouldn't have. I guess if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Or just to explain it a little bit. Yeah. So that's kind of where the Mustang Matters, the Care and Connect, and then the house structure, all that kind of falls under the same kind of umbrella there.
Yeah, it's evident. It's evident that they're not spending a whole lot of time on reading, writing, and arithmetic. The effort seems to be going into these groups, these clubs, these names.
The image.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's, the whole image thing, that's another thing that this district has. And you really hit the nail on the head when you said that it's selling these children. You're selling something. Because there's communication from leadership in this district is coming through YouTube videos. Especially when it first started, when this school year first started, we had a lot of back and forth with in-person, virtual, and every time that there was a change to be made, a video was put out. We weren't given an email with clear information. It was a video with all that, the background music and, the drone footage of, the community or some area in the community or whatever. And then it always comes back to, connecting people, place, and purpose, power of place, all that stuff.
Wow.
So it's very strange. I call it the school infomercials. That's what they are.
Yeah. They are bad. There's there's no doubt about that. And again, they're just so scripted and so nonsensical. Mm-hmm. That it makes you wonder if you're even watching a school employee talk about a school.
It really, and the thing,
it's almost like it's almost like they're talking about a restaurant.
Almost. What really gets me irritated about the whole thing is it's so confusing to the average person. If you're not really, really paying attention, you don't know what's going on, and it's by design, I'm sure. If you weren't. Even, I have to admit, I have to publicly say, I am so sorry to all the teachers who had called me and warned me last spring, is almost an entire year ago, that this was coming and this was happening. I didn't believe it. I thought they were just being dramatic. When all things started to go south with our principal being forced to resign and step down. And I didn't listen at first. I was just as confused as any normal parent out there until I started doing the deep dives into what this stuff is. And that's when I started. And of course, it was already too late by this point. I had already, drank some of the Kool-Aid and gotten on the bandwagon and helped get this principal hired. And now that the curtain's been pulled back and I see what's going on here, it's absolutely, it's crazy. It's by design that it's confusing. It's by design that it leaves you wondering, well, maybe I'm just not smart enough to understand what they're doing here. It does make you feel that way as a normal average parent. Makes you feel like these are educators, they know what they're doing. Well, yeah, they do know what they're doing, but it's not what you think. It's not education.
Let me see here. Do me a favor and run through a basic school day with one of your children in that school, starting from either the moment that they show up and what the processes are right to the end of the day, sort of as quickly as you can, I guess.
Okay, so drop them off in the morning. They will go directly to a classroom where their Mustang Matters group is meeting. Are they wearing masks? Are they socially distanced? Yes. As soon as I drop my kids off at the school. They get their temperature checked while they're still sitting in the car through the window.
Good God.
Before they get out of the car, their mask has to be on before they enter the building. A lot of times they'll even have a teacher there with a pump of hand sanitizer before they enter the building. And then they'll go directly to their Mustang Matters group. And they stay there for about, I think it's an hour, and then they go to their classroom. In their classroom, this is the part where they're supposed to be doing their literacy experiences, which this district is all about making kids love reading, not necessarily teaching them how to read. And that is actually something to that effect has actually been said by leaders within this district. So they'll do their literacy experiences for a while. They have specials. Specials are things like music, art, and PE. And then after specials, they'll have, maybe some more core experiences, which would be your math, your maybe science. And then after that, and I'm talking about this is on the elementary level. After that, you have lunch. After lunch, you go back to core experiences, recess, and then gift projects for the last 2 hours of the day. Gift projects and passion courses. Gift projects are, so for example, my son's working on restaurants. They're studying restaurants and ordering food and what all goes into making a business at a restaurant. They're, doing concept drawings and dioramas of a restaurant and making mock menus and pricing and things like that. And they have to figure out overhead costs versus how much money they're making and things like that. That's their gift project in 5th grade. I don't know exactly what my oldest son is working on. He's 8th grade. He doesn't really talk a whole lot about what's going on in school. I do know that they are also doing passion courses, and this is something that a teacher is passionate about and they want to teach to students. So there's one teacher that likes to sew, so she's teaching a sewing class. There's another teacher that likes carpentry, so he's teaching carpentry. And that's kind of like their electives. We don't really have the funding to have specific elective teachers. So that's always been an issue for us in the middle school. We also don't have the funding to do languages like Spanish or French. And our art teacher is also our math teacher. So, we have a lot of juggling to do with the K-8 structure, and it can get kind of hairy, especially, and our middle school suffers for it, but there's not a lot we can do about it at the moment unless they build us a whole new school, which they won't do. But anyway, so that's kind of a run through of their day when they're in person.
Have you witnessed the coming and going of school buses and how that operates?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the school buses, of course, my kids do ride a bus coming home. They have to have a mask on while they're on the bus, and they get off the bus and their little mask is on. They'll take it off immediately. Buses get to the school. I've seen they get to the school. They park in their specific bus unloading locations. Kids sit on the bus until a teacher comes to walk them across the road. I guess there's our gym, our parking lots. They're all separated from the main part of the school by parking lots and roads, like actual residential roads. So we need a lot of staff to help usher kids into the building and safely. But yeah, the buses will park in the upper parking lot, walk the kids across the road. The teacher walks the kids across the road as the buses unload, and then after all the buses are unloaded, then we'll start the kids that are dropped off, like my children, will go through the drop-off line, get their temperatures checked. As the kids are getting off the bus, they're getting their temperature checked at the door. Have to have a mask on. Of course, they're already masked because they've been on the bus. And then again, my middle school son, goes into the gym with the middle schoolers. He gets his temperature checked in the car and then gets it checked again, often right there at the gym before he goes into the gym. So he's, that kind of irritates him that he gets it checked twice. But
yeah, or checked at all.
Yeah,
that's absolutely
exactly.
Nuts. Do they wear masks during physical education?
I believe they do, yes, unless they're outside.
Okay. What perceptions have you gained from other parents about what's going on here?
A lot of parents don't like it, but they're either afraid to speak out, they don't want retaliation on their children, or they're afraid of retaliation against their children. That's a big thing. Some don't want to rock the boat. Others are completely buying into this. It's just all over the place. But nobody has really stepped up to speak out other than myself.
Yeah, that was leading me to my next question. I loved what you said at that board meeting. And I read it in the previous episode, I believe. Mm-hmm. I just loved it. How many parents were in the room when you said that, and how many of them do you think agreed with what you were saying?
Non-school employee parents in the building or in the room when I said that. The only one was my husband.
Wow.
Yeah, we had to, and of course these things are always strategically designed so that you have the least amount of participation from, quote, stakeholders. I had to sit through, my husband and I sat through a 2-hour board meeting to wait for my time to speak, that they have their public comments at the end of the board meeting, the very end.
Yeah.
So not many people are going to stick it out. I guess I'm a glutton for punishment. I don't know.
Well, I'll tell you what, you're certainly doing the right thing. In fact, to mention a potential positive here, and of course it would take it's going to take people in your district to actually stand up against this, but in looking up the voting demographics in your county, you're a red county to say the least, which is great.
Right.
I also noticed that 4 board members were voted in this past election. Mm-hmm. And 3 of them ran unopposed.
Yes.
And then one of them only won by like 50 votes. Mm-hmm. It seems to me that all a person would have to do to be a board member and replace the existing board members and then create the domino effect that gets rid of this entire thing, including the superintendent and getting rid of him, is to run for school board against these people and use this program as the reason to run against them. And then, I know that this all sounds easy coming out of my mouth, but, simply using that as the platform to beat them. And I'm almost certain that anybody could. Mm-hmm. Because again, if they're running unopposed, they think that they are there and they'll never lose that position.
Right.
It just seems like a district that's easily tippable in the right direction if enough, if there's just enough parents out there that get involved, and then best case scenario, everybody wins, the board members lose. You on your first day, you move on in and you fire the superintendent, or you shorten the length of his contract and you buy him out, and then he's gone, and then you can just go back to actually teaching and learning. And I think the relief that the teachers themselves would have. I mean, I can't imagine a teacher actually voting for a board member who supports these kinds of, this kind of program. I'm sure they're out there. I'm sure there are teachers that love what's going on, but there have to be teachers that just hate it.
Oh, there are. And I'd say it's pretty well a split 50-50 when it comes to that. And I say that because this whole thing, there definitely was a 5-year plan, and we're probably 3 years into its implementation. And getting the right people in the right places was absolutely the first thing that started happening. And I say right people in the right places, and that's not, the right people to implement this particular plan, whatever it is. So yeah, and that included getting rid of all the directors at central office within the first week of our superintendent being hired.
I'll tell you what, too, and again, you know that I brought this up to you over text message, but I found the symbolism of the curriculum to be very interesting, to say the least.
Right.
And for those that are listening to this for the first time, it's a drawing of a 3-tiered flame, and then somebody, again, looking at it, a novice, I suppose, and I could have it wrong. I could just be looking too deeply into it, but it seems a little obvious to me. And even you said, yeah, that's not right. It's a 3-tiered flame, and somebody looking at it would say, well, it's just a flame. What's the big deal? And then you look at what the Arabic calligraphy for Allah is, and it's the same flame by and large. It's just reversed. I wrote a book, Purposeful Deception, a while back, and I brought that up, that the Obama administration implanted the Muslim Brotherhood into the Department of Education, not just at the national level, but at state levels as well. And that all just filters its way down. I'm not saying that that's the case here, but it's too coincidental for me. And again, you and I have gone back and forth on what are the actual origins of this curriculum.
Yeah.
Who created it? Where did it come from? Because again, I find it very hard to believe that your superintendent created this on his own. I still think that would be an interesting dig to make, but it's hard to know how deep down that rabbit hole it actually goes.
I don't know whether or not they just picked a symbol and had no idea what they were doing, or if there was actually purpose to it. I don't know. But I can say that, if, like I said before, if you're not digging deep into these things and into what's going on, and this is to parents out there and even teachers who, are frustrated and know that something's not right, if you're not really starting to dig into the things that they're saying and doing and implementing, you are just going to be, you're going to continue to be confused. And that's how they want it. They want you to be confused, because if you know what's going on, if you know what this really is and the purpose of it, you have no choice but to stand up and say something.
Yeah. It becomes scary. Yeah. Speaking of scary, do me a favor and describe what you were talking about regarding the relationship that your principal has with one of the troublemaker students in the building.
Okay, so
deep sigh.
Yes. So there is a troublemaker, I guess to call him a troubled student, who has gotten in trouble multiple times and sent to the county's or the district's alternative school. Now, this is hearsay. This is what I'm hearing from other people. I don't know this firsthand, but he was kicked out, expelled from the alternative school, and brought back into our school. And this student is allowed to pretty much have free reign, do what he wants. He hangs out in the Family Resource Center, helps out around the office. He, invited into the office. Now, again, hearsay, invited into the office, given candy, soft drinks. And he's often like given a set of keys to go open a door for somebody or whatever. But this, and we're talking about a kid that, behavior issues enough to be sent to an alternative school. That comes with fighting, that comes with being, disruptive in class, that comes with, skipping class, that comes with, skipping school. All those behaviors that we tell our kids not to do, and he's been doing, and got sent away from the alternative school. And now we're rewarding that. I guess that's part of their restorative practices. But then how is it restorative? The restorative discipline practices, how is it restorative to collectively punish an entire middle school for a fight, which has recently happened? It's very disproportional. It just seems to me, and again, hearsay, I've seen some things just in the drop-off line of this particular student, between student and administrator interactions, but it seems to me that, they like a project student. We're going to be the one to save this kid, and maybe you can save him, but not by rewarding the behavior that you're telling other kids they can't do.
Yep. It's clearly setting a bad example.
Oh, yes.
There's no doubt about that. And, since you were talking about well, not to mention, as you said, it doesn't sound like he's actually in any classroom. He's just sort of being babysat all day long.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know. I'm not there.
Sure.
But it certainly appears that way. And you can talk to any student and they'll tell you, yes, that, it's not right. This is what's going on. I don't understand it.
Yeah. When it comes to the investigation of particular programs, and I don't know if we've talked about this before, and if we have, stop me, but you mentioned restorative practices. A lot of people don't even dive into what that means in the origins of restorative practices. So again, for people listening to this for the first time, there are unfortunately a lot of K12 schools that have what they refer to as restorative practices. And restorative practices actually started from an Australian judge. And what he did is he kind of created this, I don't know if it's a program or a vocabulary or whatever it was, but it was a way to reintroduce hardened felons who are basically about to leave jail and be on parole and then re-enter society, how to get them to readapt to a civil society. It's not uncommon for in particular the American K-12 education system to be at the butt end of a program, so that by the time this program is developed in a completely separate avenue, and in this particular case as well, a completely separate country, by the time it reaches America and American schools, it's been watered down so much and stepped on so much that it takes on a different meaning. And they believe that it will work with students when in fact it doesn't. In fact, it doesn't even work with hardened felons in many cases. So the restorative practices piece has a lot to do with using quote unquote common language. Having the person accept responsibility for their own actions, and then having them run through this, whatever it is, a 6 or 7 step vocabulary where basically they admit wrongdoing and they say they won't do it again and blah, blah, blah. And it never works out. It just never, ever works out. And it doesn't matter how hard the student is or how tough they are. It doesn't work out. And then they push all of this vernacular and these programs on their teachers. And what it really is it's a poor attempt to discipline a student without disciplining them so that it looks like the school isn't disciplining anybody. Because the more discipline that a school engages in with their students, the worse the school thinks that makes them look.
Yeah.
So that's that. Yeah, that's the fraud of restorative practices. It's like behavioral money laundering. You're not really fixing any problem. You're just making it look like you're fixing a problem.
And that's exactly what's happening.
Is there ever a moment in the school year, whether it's at the beginning, middle, end, whatever it is, usually it comes at the beginning if it's going to happen at all, but is there ever a moment where the principal of this school building stands up in front of parents face to face, not over a screen, but face to face, and tells them what's going on in the building, and then the parents have an opportunity to communicate back face to face with the administration?
No, never. No, that has not happened.
It certainly seems. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, of course, you have COVID and all that nonsense, but to my knowledge, since we've been in this particular school, we have not had that face-to-face. Part of the reason I got involved with site-based was so that I would know what's going on a very close level, because, my kids, they're kids. They don't talk very much. I have one child that will tell me everything. The other two are like, how's your day? Fine. That kind of thing. So I got involved to be involved, to know what's happening. And then, of course, the second reason was I wanted to be able to help, to make a difference. But to my knowledge, since I've been at this school, no, we have not had a face-to-face town hall style meeting at all with anybody, any administrator or principal. No. I take that back. Back a couple years, or almost 10 years ago, there was talk about merging two of the schools, both K through 8 structure, merging them, making one an elementary and one a middle school. And a lot of parents got upset about that and got involved in that. And that was when they started, they had a few town hall style meetings with the superintendent at each of the schools. And that whole concept of merging those schools went away. It was so unpopular. But since then, no, there has not been a time where any leader has reached out to go over what's happening and what parents can expect or get their opinion.
Yeah, I was curious about that, because it certainly doesn't seem like this is the kind of district that would be doing that, number one. And number two, again, as you mentioned, the COVID nonsense has kicked things into a particular gear. And I think it's clearly on purpose to create a further divide between those in quote unquote authority and parents.
Mm-hmm.
And then that lack of communication just allows those in an authority position to be more authoritarian than maybe they would otherwise if they had more parental contact and there was more parental say.
Right. I agree.
Just describe a little too here, because we can end on a positive note, I think, to some extent. But you mentioned that you're sending a couple of your children now or you're going to private school.
Mm-hmm.
What homework have you done on this private school, and what differences do you see between that school and the one that they're currently in?
The private school has been in the community for, since the 30s. It's a Catholic school. My father-in-law attended that school when he was a child. They are about academic excellence. Their mission statement is every child is a gift from God, and they really integrate into academic rigor also, Christian values, which of course I'm all for that. And it's not necessary. That's not the main reason I'm doing this. It's definitely a bonus. I love that, they're going to have that extra bit of, our, same Christian values and beliefs instilled in their education. But the academic rigor and academic excellence is really what drew me to that school. And if you, and there's actually two Catholic schools that are known for academic excellence in the same school district area as our public school that we go to. But and they both, any students that come out of these schools, that they're going to be top of the line, in their academic abilities, just because of the rigor and just the curriculum that they use. It's really good. The teachers are really dedicated. A lot of them are veteran teachers that retired and came back to teach at this private school. So that was just really a good draw. And of course it's part of it is convenience too. It's, in the same community. We don't have to go very far and change a lot of our routine around taking them somewhere else or anything. Homeschooling was not going to be an option. I still have to work, and we are going to have to make some sacrifices to be able to afford private school, but it's a sacrifice that's worth making. It's my children's future.
It sounds delightful.
I can't wait.
Yeah.
I'm excited. We're excited about it. The kids are even excited. So.
Well, on that note, any advice that you have for anybody who's listening to this? Again, other parents who are experiencing the same thing, other students who are experiencing the same thing, other teachers who are experiencing the same thing, anything that you'd like to offer up to them?
Well, I do want to say I am concerned that once I leave, things are going to go silent. There's going to be radio silence. That concerns me for the school. I care so much about our community and those kids. And if there's nobody there to speak up for them, it's going to get really bad. It's going to get really, really bad. So my advice would be, if you're worried about retaliation on your students, don't be. Talk to your kids. Tell them what's going on. Tell them this is wrong and I have to take a stand and this might happen to you, but I am going to be there to support you 100%. If somebody tries to retaliate in a teacher, and they shouldn't. If they're professionals, they should not. And if they do, you have every right to take legal action. But stand up and say something, because these are your kids. They only get one shot at their education, and it's going to take so much to fix all of this damage. It will have generational impacts. I'm talking for generations to come. This will impact your children and their children. There is no room for playing it safe and being socially acceptable. You have to take a stand. If you care about your kids, you have to take a stand.
I want to take a few minutes here and just thank Vanessa Hurst for her work in her community and what she's been doing in her town with this school district and her children's school. If other vigilant American parents continued to do this all over the place, these criminal organizations that are K12 school districts, in particular, I might add, the ones that are just like this one, where academic success and knowledge of subjects is not at the top of the list, in fact, far from it. If more citizens in an area got involved and knew what was going on in these school districts, again, where they're probably paying their own taxpayer dollars to help fund them, then they would probably get involved and hopefully change things for the better. You would hope that would be the case. And one of the things that we discussed throughout, and we sort of continued even after I was recording, is we were talking about the first time that Vanessa was on. The first time that she was on, she was blowing the lid wide open on all of this. And it's a sad state of affairs because what's happening in this district isn't new. It's happening all over the place, and it happens in lots of districts. The same is true, I should say, with successful districts. You can have a horrible school district right next door to a very successful school district, and the horrible school district doesn't even think for a moment to look over at the successful one and say, hey, wait a minute, they're successful, maybe we should do what they're doing. For example, as you heard her mention, she's sending her children to two of her children to a private school where they focus on academic rigor and content knowledge, and that's the focus. It's not, we're going to love reading. It's, no, you're going to read. You're going to comprehend. You're going to write. That's what you're going to do. Everybody knows, or should know, that that is what makes a successful student. So why are some districts not just copying that model and just doing that and then keeping that there for as long as they're all alive? And it should tell everybody that these districts and the employees who are pushing forth these heinous curriculum ideas are doing so for the purpose of control, purposeful mediocrity, and maintaining their employment. They aren't really there to be successful. And again, I know that that's hard for some people to grasp, where they would say, well, wait a minute, why wouldn't they want to be successful? Well, if their definition of success is mediocrity, then that's all you're going to get. If their definition of success is I have to do what I'm told from the people above me, even if they're dead wrong or even if I agree with them, well, then that's their definition of success. But that's not what success is. Schools should very easily measure success by what their students know or don't know. And she laid it out perfectly as to what students are learning and what they're not learning. And as they age, they're not just going to pick this factual information up as they go along. It has to be taught at a very young age. And here's the last point I'll mention. We discussed, too, about the impact of the first time that she was on. And she described how even her own priest was impressed with the podcast episode where she was describing what was going on in the school district. There were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of downloads of that particular podcast episode. And that right there should be fuel to anybody who is listening to a story like this and they're saying to themselves, well, I don't think that we can control what's going on, or how do we get our arms around this horrible situation and make it better? And again, as we discussed, it's possible, and you can do it. 3 out of the 4 board members in this particular school district ran unopposed. Each one of them received roughly 1,200 plus votes. And in the other school board race, one of the individuals only lost, and the other person won by 50 some odd votes. This is public information. If you just do a simple internet search on some of these things, and you're looking at a school district and you're saying to yourself, well, this school district isn't doing what they need to be doing. Well, look at who's voting for them, how many votes are they getting, and is anybody voting against them? Because Vanessa Hurst has, like countless people do in America, they have access to churches. So simply asking a priest even, hey, do you mind if I talk to the congregation for 10 minutes and describe what's going on in this school district? That right there will wake up a ton of people. You're bringing it up in an environment where they feel comfortable, and you're bringing up something that's very, very serious, which is usually, again, a church, which is also where very serious subjects are brought up on a regular basis. So if you're interested in recruiting future school board members, that right there seems like a great place to do it. And it's certainly a great place to try. Again, it's not something that I've ever done personally, but goodness gracious, if we aren't taking back these school boards and these school districts and snatching it away from these horrible people and these horrible programs that they're implementing, then we're lost. And it's not just your own children that are going to suffer. It's the children in the entire area that are going to suffer. And as she said, they're going to suffer for generations to come. But there are solutions, and those solutions usually involve communication. So again, if you're a church-going individual, speak with the individuals that run that church. Talk with them about what's going on. Ask them if you can speak to the congregation for a few minutes and let them know what's actually happening and how heinous it is. And again, I think that a simple communication like that might wake up a whole lot of people. Because normally, you give a talk like that, almost instantly you're going to have people coming up to you afterwards and asking you more questions. And that right there starts a serious dialogue on turning things around in a positive direction. Because again, this school district is right next to, and this school is right next to an excellent private school, apparently, that is doing everything correctly, in particular from an academic standpoint. And that right there should tell you that the answer is not that far away. Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.